Order. The sitting is resumed. We move to questions to the Minister of Finance, and I call Philip Brett. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I will group questions 1 and 15. As the member will be aware, I have already established and appointed members to the Interim Public Sector Transformation Board. This followed cross-party executive agreement to my proposal for the Transformation Programme and the Interim Board on the 9th of May. This was necessary in order to deploy the £235 million of ring-fence funding contained in the Executive's financial package. The Interim Public Sector Transformation Board, chaired by Jane Brady, Head of the Civil Service, held its first meeting on the 21st of May and has made significant progress in its work since that time. The Interim Board is a non-statutory body whose role is to provide recommendations to me as Finance Minister on proposals it considers to be transformative. The terms of reference for the Interim Board is a matter for negotiation with the British Government. The terms of reference, once agreed, will confirm the membership of the Board going forward, and where I am also clear that these must respect devolved decision-making on transformation. There have unfortunately been some delays in reaching agreement on the terms of reference, in part given the change in the British Government. However, my officials have repeatedly pushed to have this issue resolved, and I am pleased to report that I have now considered a draft terms of reference provided by my officials following their engagement with NIO counterparts, and I have shared the draft terms of reference with my executive colleagues for their consideration before I engage with the British Secretary of State to agree the detail of those, after which, of course, I will update the Finance Committee and the Assembly.
Mr. Brett.
Thank you, Minister, for that update, and I agree with you that the role of the Board is to advise. But do you have concerns, Minister, at the decisions taken by the Public Sector Transformation Board to streamline the 47 bids that were received down until 29, which then reached your desk? And that's a decision that they made to make 18 projects not taken forward to the next stage. Does she share my concern that this Board is making decisions by people who are not accountable to this House and should be taken by you, Minister, and not by unelected civil servants?
Minister.
So the Executive obviously will decide which proposals are funded based on my recommendations, and the role of the Board is to provide advice to inform those decisions, not to take those decisions. So the Board is working under a very clear direction and criteria set by and agreed by the Executive to assess and determine what proposals are in fact transformational, and it will then of course be for the Executive to decide which of those go forward for funding. The Head of the Civil Service, in her role as Chair of the Interim Board, has kept me updated, and I have met with her on a number of occasions. She advised me of the approach in relation to proposals that were being taken forward, and as the member has outlined, 29 proposals out of the 47 were considered to be transformational and to move forward to the next stage. 11 of those have moved to a stage 2 assessment, and 18 are within a digital landscape review. There are a number of proposals that are no longer moving forward at this point, but the Board's role very clearly is to assess whether the proposals are transformative, provide advice to me on that basis, and that's in keeping with the approach that was agreed by the Executive.
Peter Martin.
Question number 2? No. Question 15. Apologies, Mr. Speaker. Question 15.
No, you supplementary, please.
Point in time. Mr. Speaker, I don't have a supplementary.
Okay, Matthew Till.
Minister, your answer to Mr. Brett did throw up some more questions. You say that decisions haven't been taken, but by definition, if projects and bids are being ruled off are being taken off the table by this Board, which includes, by the way, the Permanent Secretary of the Northern Ireland Office, which is pretty dubious when it comes to devolution, that is by definition making a decision. So, can you be clear? When are these proposals actually going to be brought to the Executive? When are we going to have a final indication of what the Transformation Fund is actually going to fund? Because at the minute we're hearing lots of contradictory things.
Minister.
The Interim Board, as agreed by the Executive, its role is to filter proposals. that have been put forward by departments that they consider to be transformative and remove those that they don't consider to be. That's on the same basis that officials provide advice to ministers on a range of issues. The final decisions on which projects will be selected will be made by the Executive following a recommendation from me as Finance Minister. The Executive will make its final decision based on a short list of transformative proposals put forward. I know that officials updated the committee very recently in relation to the Transformation Board and indicated that a Stage 2 process has been conducted. I understand that the Transformation Board is to meet later this week, and I will receive advice then in relation to how those bids have progressed, and will be then taking proposals to the Executive in relation to that.
Nicola Brogan.
Can the Minister outline how confident she is that this new approach to funding will be successful?
So it's my ambition that this approach to transformation will help to drive innovative thinking within departments to help our services become more sustainable and efficient going forward. That's why the Public Sector Transformation Board encouraged departments to bring forward more novel proposals and outlined in their initial call that the risk of failure should not become a blocker to creative and innovative thinking. I want to maximise the opportunities for this funding, and I meet and correspond regularly with the Chair of the Interim Board, Jane Brady, in relation to the progress of the programme. I encourage the Interim Board to be flexible in its approach and to reflect back to ensure that the transformation programme can adapt for the future rounds of transformation funding. I've raised directly with the Chair that I would like further consideration on how the programme can be widened going forward. The Interim Board has adapted its methods during this process. For example, it has placed importance on qualitative assessments of proposals. It is undertaking a landscape review for digital proposals, bringing in additional expertise, and it has engaged directly and in person with departments to test and to probe and help strengthen proposals to ensure the strongest possible proposals come back for consideration. I also understand that feedback from departments has been very positive and that departments have enjoyed the challenge of pitching for funding in this way, with a view to getting access to the much needed additional funding to help deliver public services. While we all know that the £235 million of funding that we have over 5 years for transformation will in no way tackle the magnitude of issues at hand, I think that it can be significant in helping to develop and implement a model of delivery which will also help stimulate wider transformation of public services.
Nick Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her answers so far. If and when the Public Service Transformation Board is made permanent, will departments have further opportunity to submit new bids, given that the window of time initially was very short?
Minister.
So the board was set up on an interim basis while we were also considering an interim terms of reference, so that work is ongoing, and I will hope to see progress in relation to that very shortly. The way the transformation funding is structured, it's on the basis of £47 million for 5 years, each year over 5 years. So there will be further opportunities for departments to bid into that, and I would like it to be an iterative process so that bids can be developed, people can get feedback and develop them further, and that's the type of approach that I have encouraged the Transformation Board to take, that there is a collaboration and cooperation with departments to inform the best possible bids.
Mr. Gallison. Hey, Minister.
My officials are conducting this recruitment exercise on behalf of the Executive Office. My departmental HR officials worked with officials from the Executive Office on the design of a competition for the post of Head of Regulatory Divergence Coordination at Grade 7 level. Details of the role are set out in the candidate information booklet, which was advertised on Monday the 7th of October on the NIC's recruitment website.
Mr. Gallison.
Mr. Speaker, £59,000 a year to fund a post dealing with divergence between Great Britain and Northern Ireland makes a mockery of the claims that the Irish Sea border has gone. Does the remit of this employee include monitoring the cost to businesses of severing our links with the rest of the United Kingdom?
Mr.
So the Executive Office submitted the vacancy to Nix HR. They would have included what the roles and responsibility of the post in the funding and headcount form that they are required to complete. Further discussions then took place between HR and the Executive Office to finalise and agree that, which includes the roles and responsibilities prior to the competition being advertised, and obviously trade unions were consulted in relation to that. So the full details of the responsibilities and roles for the post will be included in the HR candidate booklet.
Thank you. Could the Minister further expand on how the roles and responsibilities for the post were determined?
Minister.
So, as I outlined it in response to Mr Gaston there, it would have been a process between the Executive Office and Nix HR in my department to understand what the role or that the individual would be required to undertake and the responsibility of that post. And obviously that process would have been conducted and engagement would have been had in relation to the role with trade union side also prior to the competition being launched.
Crawford.
Minister, can I ask what the relationship will be between the post and organisation with the Windsor Framework Scrutiny Committee, please?
Minister.
Well, some of the responsibilities of the post include the potential managing the or coordinating the next management of potential or material regulatory divergence stemming from compliance with the Windsor Framework, leading on the administrative and maintenance of the Executive Office's EU law information tracking system, coordinating next engagement with the British Government's post-EU exit common frameworks programme, coordinating engagement with the British Government on retained EU law and its implementing legislation programme, and representing Nix on the above issues with the British Government, Scottish Government and Welsh colleagues, and providing quality and timely briefing to ministers and officials, and obviously leading a small team operating in a fast-paced, high-profile policy portfolio. So there will be, I would imagine it would be for the Executive Office to determine what the engagement would be with the relevant committees.
Senator McLaughlin.
Minister, have you done any proactive work to ensure Invest NI, Intertrade Ireland and other relevant bodies have the funding that they need to promote and maximise dual market access?
Obviously, the Economy Minister would lead in terms of engaging with those organisations in relation to their budgetary requirements, and that would inform his bids that he would be making in relation to both the budget and any monitoring rounds that are undertaken. And obviously, it will be a matter for him as to how he makes those decisions in relation to how funding flows from his department.
Maurice Bradley.
Question 3.
Minister.
My department is currently assessing its entire accommodation requirements as part of the Nix estate strategy, which includes its plans up to 2035. The implementation of the hybrid working policy in 2021 has significantly changed how the civil service uses its estate and has provided opportunities to progress a leaner, greener and more modern estate suited to the needs of the civil service in delivering today's public services. It's important that we have a modern, fit-for-purpose and right-sized office estate that is a welcoming environment for people to work collaboratively. County Hall Coleraine is currently under-occupied. Therefore, a review of accommodations needs in that area will be undertaken over the next 24 months. This will be carried out in consultation with the relevant departments who occupy the building.
Mr Bradley.
Thank the Minister for her answer there. But Minister, the Minister for Communities made a welcome announcement of 1,000 new jobs across Northern Ireland recently. What discussions have taken place with your department and the Department of Communities in relation to job creation in Coleraine in the light of Coleraine site missing out on the recent DWP opportunities?
Minister.
I haven't had any direct correspondence in relation to that issue from the Minister for Communities. Obviously, we are committed to ensuring that there is regional balance in relation to our office estate, and therefore I'm happy to engage with the Minister or anyone else on that basis.
Ciara Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I ask the Minister what steps has the Department taken to ensure or achieve a regional balance when placing civil service jobs and posts? Thank you.
Civil service staff are posted in accommodation right across the north, both in the Department of Finance's office estate and in buildings owned or leased by other departments. 6 Connect 2 hubs were opened in August 2022, allowing staff to work remotely at 6 regional locations in Ballykelly, Ballymena, Bangor, Craigavon, Downpatrick and Omagh as an occasional alternative to working from home or in their designated workplace. The Civil Service has also implemented a hybrid working policy which helps support regional balance by affording its workforce more choice about their working location, allowing a mix of workplace, home and remote working. As a major employer, the Civil Service recognises the potential benefits of hybrid working in contributing to regional balance. Therefore, hybrid working is available where possible for all employment opportunities offered by the Civil Service. Decisions about where Civil Service staff need to be located to perform their work duties are for departments to consider. Individual departments determine the number, type and grade of posts at each location.
Kelly Armstrong.
Mr Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, you have talked about the accommodation requirement review undergoing. That may well lead to rationalisation of estate. Is there any option or a policy that could be brought forward with the Minister for Communities to have a change of use to provide first refusal for housing options, given we're in a housing crisis?
Minister.
There is a disposal process that is undertaken in relation to any surplus buildings, and that's something that I am actually keen to look at and review and to make sure that it is fit for purpose, including in relation to community asset transfer. And so I will be open to any conversations about how we can best utilise the buildings that we have and how we can pass those on and ensure that we obviously get value for money for them, but that they can go to the uses that are most needed in our communities also.
Orlea Flynn.
Good to can call you. Question number 4, please.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I will answer questions 4 and 5 together. In the autumn budget announced on the 30th of October, the British Chancellor set out the Executive's final funding envelope for 24-25 and the funding envelope for the first phase of the spending review for 25-26. For 24-25, the Executive will receive Barnett consequentials of £609.3 million resource DEL and £30.4 million capital DEL above the Westminster main estimate position. On top of the £308.9 million of additional Barnett consequential received from the spring budget and Westminster main estimates, which was allocated in June monitoring, this makes a total of £918.2 million additional resource DEL funding in 24-25. This level of in-year funding is unprecedented outside of COVID and reflects the extent of the impact on public services of 14 years of Tory austerity. While this funding is welcome and will come some way towards meeting current in-year pressures, significant challenges do remain for the Executive. I will bring proposals on the allocation of the available resource and capital DEL for 24-25 as part of the October monitoring round. For 25-26, the Treasury has confirmed £609.3 million of resource DEL Barnett consequentials allocated in the autumn budget for 24-25, which will be baselined in 25-26. This approach has not been taken for the autumn budget capital DEL consequentials. In addition, the Executive will receive Barnett consequentials for 25-26 of £600.9 million resource DEL and £270.8 million capital DEL, with a reduction of £4.6 million of financial transaction capital. Including the restoration package, the Executive will receive a further £68.7 million resource DEL and £91.6 million capital DEL of non-Barnett funding. I intend to bring proposals for a draft budget to the Executive in the near future. Unfortunately, as the Chancellor's announcement only covered 25-26, this draft budget will be for only 1 year. Going forward, I intend to move to multi-year budgets where multi-year spending review settlements allow.
Thank you. You should have asked beforehand if you wanted to run over. But call Colin McGrath. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. When can we expect to see a draft budget for 25-26?
With the funding envelope for 25-26 now announced, it is my intention, subject to agreement, to publish a draft budget by early December to allow for the full 12-week consultation before a final budget is agreed by the Executive prior to the start of the new financial year.
Colin McGrath.
Speaker, the Chancellor announced an increase in employers' contribution to national insurance, and businesses in Northern Ireland will have to pay that. The Chancellor also announced a reduction of 40% in business rates for retail and hospitality to help them offset that impact. Whether Northern Ireland businesses get that or not is down to yourself. Will you include a comparable rate relief for retail and hospitality in Northern Ireland in your upcoming reforms of the rate system?
Minister.
As I indicated yesterday, the changes to the rates relief in England for retail, hospitality and leisure has led to a reduction in our Barnett consequential for this year, along with some other rate reliefs that were removed or changed, of about £80 million. As the member will be aware, obviously we do still face significant issues in relation to our own budgets, including for this financial year, but also into next year. I do recognise the many challenges facing businesses. I recognise that the increase in national insurance and real living wage and national minimum wage will also put additional challenges on our businesses. So I'm keen to work with businesses, and we'll be looking at how we can work together to address some of those challenges.
Jerry Carroll.
New money or indication that there will be money to either mitigate or reinstate the winter fuel payment, or to mitigate or abolish the two-child tax limit?
Minister.
No, as I indicated yesterday when I was making my statement on the budget, I was disappointed that neither of those things were addressed in the British Chancellor's budget on last Wednesday, and I think that indicates that impact of bad decisions that are taken in Westminster on people here, and obviously with the continuing challenges to the Executive's budget, it is not possible for the Executive to mitigate every such bad decision. I would implore the Chancellor to look again at some of those issues, and hopefully we will see some additional work, particularly in relation to the two-child cap.
Donnelly.
Thank you to the Minister for her answer so far. Many organisations across Northern Ireland, including my own constituency of East Antrim, are reliant on shared prosperity funding to deliver services, very important services that affect all of our communities. What is the Minister's assessment of the announcement of £900 million of transitional funding for the Shared Prosperity Fund, and the impact? What impact will this have in Northern Ireland?
Sir.
So the allocation to the Executive for next year in relation to the Shared Prosperity Fund is as yet unknown, but the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government advises that they will provide this information soon to give certainty to groups and projects who may be facing funding cliff edges at the end of 24-25. And of course we had continually made the case that we needed to have that certainty for those groups as soon as possible. I understand this is a discrete pot of funding for the 25-26 year, and a revised Shared Prosperity Fund perspective is being developed beyond that. I recognise that the £900 million represents a 40% reduction in the shared prosperity funding from 24-25, and that's obviously not what I or the groups out there want to hear. I can say this is a transition year, and for that post-26 funding, I would fully expect a co-designed programme focusing on our priorities and delivered through the Executive to achieve positive outcomes for our citizens, and I think no less than co-design is acceptable in relation to that, and I will be continuing to impress that upon British ministers.
Danny Baker.
Question number 6.
Minister.
To encourage young people to join the civil service, a range of measures have been introduced, including the increased use of external recruitment and expansion of entry routes into the civil service. For example, developing new apprenticeship schemes, launching a new civil service skills academy and graduate management programme, increasing the number of annual 51-week student placements on offer, and facilitating job start work experience opportunities for unemployed young people, as well as removal of qualifications from eligibility criteria to enable those not academically qualified to apply for civil service jobs, the use of social media and digital recruitment advertising channels that are typically accessed by young people, promotion or participation in events to promote the civil service as an inclusive employer, such as Belfast Mila, Pride and National Inclusion Week, increased engagement with the education sector through university recruitment fairs and careers webinars to promote the range of careers available, and facilitating work placements through the Civil Service Work Experience Scheme.
Mr Baker.
And thank you, Minister, for your answer. Can I ask what outreach work has taken place and that's aimed to encourage young people to join the civil service and the opportunities available?
Minister.
So the Civil Service undertakes a programme of outreach with the education sector to promote the careers opportunities available. Over the last 12 months, the Civil Service has participated in careers fairs and events with schools, regularly engaged with the local universities, including participation in careers fairs, career exploration days and networking. The Civil Service as an employer has also been represented at autumn careers fairs for accountancy, engineering, science, tech and ICT, law and economics, participated in careers fairs targeted to the wider job-seeking market, including those under the age of 35, and started to develop an A to Z video series of civil service careers, which will be used to promote the variety of jobs and roles and better explain the types of jobs civil servants do.
Cara Hunter.
And I thank the Minister for her answers so far. Minister, I'm mindful in our document Make a Change programme about the civil service. We want to see a civil service that has young people, people from diverse backgrounds, and I'm mindful in years to come 70% of our grade 5s within our civil service are due to retire. What more can we do with the young people in our civil service to upskill them and to keep them within our civil service and upgrading each and every year with personal development?
Minister.
Yeah, and I agree with the member. I think it is important not only to attract and recruit more young people into the civil service, but also to support those young people that are in there through continuous professional development. And there is a significant programme throughout the civil service, and if the member would like to write to me, I can provide her with additional information in relation to that.
Deborah Erskine.
Thank you, Minister. Question 7.
Minister.
Following my invitation, the Chief Executive of the Financial Conduct Authority will be travelling to Belfast to meet with me and attend the banking roundtable that I will be hosting later this month. I will be using this meeting to call on the Financial Conduct Authority Chief Executive to use all the powers at his disposal to ensure proper access to cash and banking services for citizens right across the North. The roundtable will then provide a valuable platform for a range of key stakeholders to put their concerns around access to cash directly to the Financial Conduct Authority and to discuss how the new rules can help our communities in that regard.
Ms. Erskine.
Thank you, and I thank the Minister for her answer. I welcome the fact that the roundtable will be happening, and the Minister will know that I've asked about this before, because banking in facilities in rural areas are vitally important. I did note that since the rules were confirmed in July, Link, which manages the UK cash access and ATM network, has reassessed the needs of local areas where banking facilities have changed. 15 communities which previously were not able to receive a banking hub will now get one. None of those are within Northern Ireland. Will she be making the case to the FCA when they come to that round table? Lisnaskea is a prime example in my own area which needs reassessed.
Minister.
And the issue of how need is assessed and the criteria used is an issue that I had raised in my previous roundtable, which did include representatives from Link and Cash Access UK and other senior representatives of high street banks and building societies. I tested within the industry whether the assessment process to qualify for a banking hub is suitable. So that is something that I am happy to take up again with the Financial Conduct Authority. Obviously, we'll have to see how the new rules that they have announced embed, but if we're already getting feedback that it didn't change the assessment outcomes, then that's something I think we need to explore further.
Colin Gilligan.
Thank you, Minister. And Minister, given the high cost of insurance here in the North, will the opportunity be taken at the round table to discuss what steps could be taken in relation to that cost?
So, as I mentioned, I had met recently with industry bodies to express my concerns in relation to the increase in insurance costs, which are adding further financial pressure to households, businesses and communities here, and to challenge them on what the sector is doing to contain costs. Industry bodies argue that the increases are being driven by a number of factors, some of which are being experienced globally due to inflationary pressures in the industry, while others appear to be more specific to the market here. My officials continue to engage with the FCA and the Treasury in relation to local factors affecting insurance prices here in the North to see what action they can take to help consumers. I'm pleased that the Secretary of State for Transport, Louise Hay, has written inviting me and I have agreed to attend a cross-party, cross-government meeting of the task force on the cost of motor insurance, and I intend on ensuring local issues in the North are not overlooked. In relation to that, I expect the main focus of discussion at the Banking Roundtable to be on the key issues in development around access to cash and banking services that are impacting here. But the rising insurance premiums and the impact of those on citizens and business here will form part of my separate discussions with the FCA Chief Executive on the same day, given that they have responsibilities as the regulator for the insurance sector.
Move to topical questions. To call Matthew O'Toole.
Minister, you've said that there's a negative bar not consequential, i.e. it reduces the block grant from the business rates measures in England. I take you at face value on that, but it does seem bizarre that next year the Treasury Red Book scores a £1.7 billion measure on business rates in England, but that doesn't accrue to any money here. Are you sure that we don't get any extra money as of next year in terms of those business rates measures? And even if we don't, isn't it the only policy tool that we have locally to properly help small hospitality and retail?
Minister.
Well, after the statement that I presented to the Assembly yesterday, officials have been having further engagement with Treasury and have checked the figures in relation to business rates, and unfortunately it is the case that 80 million has been taken out of our funding for business rates for next year. That means that any move to provide more support would have to come from the Executive's existing resources, and I think the challenges in relation to that have been well documented. As I said to your colleague, I remain hugely sympathetic to businesses facing so many pressures, and my engagement with them since taking up post has made it clear. They have made it clear that there are many challenges after the pandemic, including rising energy prices and inflationary pressures across a whole range of goods and services. And then also, as I mentioned, we have those other changes that were announced by the Chancellor that will also impact in relation to national insurance, national living wage and national minimum wage. And as I mentioned to Mr Carroll, it highlights when bad decisions are being made at Westminster, they impact here as well, and the Executive is not in a position to continue to mitigate every single bad decision. It's also important to emphasise that the Executive is already providing £275 million of rate relief to support businesses, but every pound that we spend on rate relief does mean either reduced revenue for public services, as you mentioned, it's our only tool to raise revenue, or higher rates bills for other homes and businesses. So I have put forward proposals in relation to our rating system and have asked the Executive for their agreement to take those forward.
Mr O'Toole.
Minister, it's important to say I acknowledge bad decisions are made in London, but that can't be everything we talk about when we come to this chamber. To be honest, we have to talk about the power that you have to improve the lives of workers, families and businesses in the North. So let's be clear. You do have the power to review the rating system. The Treasury announced last week that they're reviewing how business rates work in England to move it away, to put more tax on big warehouses such as Amazon and less business rates on small retail and hospitality and high street. You've now been looking at this for months on end. Are you going to do likewise in Northern Ireland?
Minister.
Well, I don't think that that's the only thing that I talk about in this chamber. I think I talk about quite a lot of things other than bad decisions made at Westminster, including how I negotiated an interim fiscal framework which has provided hundreds of £millions additional for this Executive and Assembly to be able to spend. I have recognised the challenges facing business. As I have said on a number of occasions, I have brought short, medium and long-term proposals to the Executive in relation to our rating system. I think it's important that our rating system is as fair, progressive and equitable as possible, that we have a system that aligns with what we're trying to achieve economically and socially, and that we create an environment which supports businesses to start up, to thrive, to create jobs. And I am committed to working across the Executive and with business organisations and others across society to ensure that we have the best system possible, and that any rate release that we have in place are ensuring that they continue to meet the policy objective that they were put in place to do.
Diane Forsyth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Childcare was identified as a key priority of this Executive, with the £25 million measures announced last May. Within that, there was £2 million that was allocated for the Department or for the Economy Minister to distribute for childcare support to providers, and to date the providers are indicating they haven't received or saw any of that. Given the budget announcements and the extreme pressure on this sector, would the Finance Minister consider intercepting here to apply that £2 million before the end of March to potentially rates relief for childcare providers?
Minister.
Obviously, it was a good thing that the Executive was able to agree that £25 million to support our childcare sector, and there was a number of measures, as you have mentioned, underneath that, which were supported by that funding. I would be happy to engage with the member and with other ministers in relation to ensuring that funding is utilised. So if you perhaps want to write to me in relation to that specific issue, and we can pick it up from there.
Very much, and I thank the Minister for her response. Just again, with a number of the workers in the childcare sector being on the lower pay, the minimum wage increase will have a significant impact on them, and a huge concern coming from the sector is this is going to have to be passed on to parents as well. So it would be great to see some sort of relief and insurance that £2 million meets the demands.
Minister.
Yes, and I know that the member and I have discussed rate relief for the childcare sector on a number of occasions, and it's something that I am open to considering if the Education Minister wants to bring forward proposals in relation to that as part of the childcare strategy. So that remains my position.
Peter Martin.
Speaker, can I ask the Minister, is she specifically considering removing rates relief for university accommodation in Northern Ireland?
Sure.
So I don't want to get into all of the specific measures, but there have been no specific decisions in respect of removing particular rate release. I want to ensure that the rate release that we do have in place continue to meet the policy objective that they were put in place to do. Obviously, there are proposals with the Executive, and I would hope that I will get support from Executive colleagues in relation to taking those forward.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank the Minister for her answer there. Can I ask, is the Minister cognizant that if this rate relief is removed, that perhaps these institutions may be forced to pass on the cost directly to students?
Said in my previous answer, obviously there has been no decision taken in relation to specific measures, and it would be for the Executive to take those decisions, because something like that particular rate relief measure would be considered cross-cutting, and obviously every single rate relief measure will have an impact on the organisations or businesses or individuals that are receiving it, and that's why it's important to review and to have a look at each of them.
Trevor Clark.
Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for her answers thus far. Many of the questions today, Mr. Speaker, has focused around financial problems for businesses, for universities and for individuals, and appreciate the Minister is very busy. But can I ask the Minister, in relation to her civil service guide for language guide, the language guide that indicates now that I refer to a woman by calling her a mix or a mux, and how much this actually cost her department, given she's so busy with sensible things that need addressed, as opposed to nonsensical stuff like this?
Minister.
I don't agree with the member's assessment that it's nonsensical. I think the civil service is committed to building a diverse and inclusive workplace that reflects the society that we serve. But I can confirm that there was no cost in developing the guide, which was developed by staff in-house in consultation with external stakeholders.
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Speaker, through yourself to the Minister, that she supports this guide and hasn't taken any cognizance of those others who may be offended by some of these new terminologies. I'm sure my colleagues to my left and to my right would much prefer to be called by their proper titles as opposed to some manufactured title that's been created by the Civil Service. Are you, Minister, supporting this document and its outworkings within the Civil Service?
Minister.
The development and the publication of the Inclusive Language Guide was a commitment in the 24-25 Civil Service Diversity Action Plan and is a part of our wide-ranging work on equality, diversity and inclusion. It was developed to promote understanding of the important role that language actually plays in creating an inclusive workplace, aims to empower civil servants to consider how the language that they use can impact others and the potential it has to make somebody feel uncomfortable or isolated or unwelcome or excluded. And I would actually take issue with the members' comments in relation to titles, because some women don't like to be defined by their marital status, and that's just a matter of fact as well.
Stephen Dunn.
Mr. Speaker, can the Minister outline, as part of your review of the rate system, whether you have any plans to introduce tougher measures to those people who are not paying their rates bills?
Minister.
So that we do have in place robust billing, collection and recovery processes to maximise rate collection and to reduce rate and debt. This includes issuing annual bills, issuing final demands for payments, recovery procedures including formal written correspondence, emails and direct telephone contact with ratepayers, legal recovery against persistent non-payment including progression through the magistrate courts, the Enforcement of Judgments Office and bankruptcy proceedings. Ratepayers experiencing financial difficulties, of course, are encouraged to contact LPS to discuss payment options, which can include restructuring current payment plans or establishing longer-term payment arrangements to enable payment of rate arrears.
Mr. Dunn.
I thank the Minister for your answer, and I know you have recently spoken about wanting to create a rate system that is fair and equitable, and I suppose, do you agree that it is fair to raise rates on residents who may be faithfully paying each year whilst ignoring the $175 million in the last financial year of unpaid rates?
Minister.
I don't think it would be fair to say that we have ignored the unpaid rates. In fact, the Department has in place a range of measures to tackle rate and debt and to reduce rate and debt, and it is something that we have set targets against and which the Department is committing to address. But it can be quite difficult to recover rate and debt as well, and there are a number of situations where it can be near impossible to obtain payment of outstanding rate debt. So it's a process that's ongoing, and that we are putting resources into ensuring that we maximise the recovery of rate debt while also ensuring that rate bills are paid as well.
Nicola Rogan.
Can the Minister provide an update on proposed changes to the rating system, please?
The members will be aware that when I was last in the chamber for oral questions on the 14th of October, I highlighted my short, medium and long-term proposals for the rating system were with the Executive for consideration. That remains the case. I had hoped by now that I would have secured executive agreement to my proposals, and as a result would have been in a position to update the House on the way forward. Every pound that we are spending on rate relief means reduced revenue for public services or higher rate bills for other homes and businesses, and in that context we must make sure every rate support measure is achieving the desired policy outcome and is delivering for citizens and businesses. That's why the proposals I brought forward outline my intent to look at every rate support measure legislated for by the Executive. It's important to stress that this review does not mean removal. I intend to begin first and foremost with small business rate relief, given its integral importance to our economy and small local businesses. And I think, given the number of questions today about the impact of decisions in the autumn budget, that is timely. I'm also conscious of member support in the House yesterday for the rejuvenation of our high streets and town centres, and I want to build on work with executive colleagues on the reintroduction of the Enhanced Back in Business scheme and look at how we can help tackle the blight of vacant properties in our towns and cities in conjunction with other executive ministers and local councils. The Executive is now fast approaching a critical juncture to reach decisions on these matters to provide sufficient time to deliver changes to come into effect for April 2025. So I hope the Executive will come to a decision quickly on my approach for the short, medium and long term, and help me get on with the job of making positive reforms to our rating system that are reflective of the economic environment that we are in.
Ms. Brogan.
Thank you, Concorla, and thank you, Minister, for your answer there. Does the Minister, Concorla, believe that the rating system can support the rejuvenation of town centres?
All of us want to see our town centres and shopping areas thriving, and I think it's very clear the difference a bustling business can make to a once empty property on the main thoroughfare of the town. The Enhanced Back in Business scheme, when it was reinstated in May, aims to bring vibrancy, footfall and investment back to our high streets. My aim is now to build on the success of that scheme and look at how we continue to tackle the blight of vacant properties by working alongside executive colleagues and commercial stakeholders to help progress the regeneration of high streets and grow a sustainable, decarbonised built environment underpinning the rate system. I was heartened listening to the debate yesterday on the rejuvenation of high street and town centres. Many of the areas touched upon, including detail on how we can help enhance access to cash, recognising consumer preferences are changing, and how to strategically address the issue of long-term derelict properties from a rating perspective are contained within the proposals on my strategic roadmap on the rating policy. This is currently with the Executive for consideration. My officials are working in partnership with a number of councils on the area of vacant units, including ascertaining the barriers to getting vacant properties reoccupied and brought back into use. In terms of reducing the level of empty properties rate relief, that is something that I want to progress, but it needs to be sequenced with the other initiatives that I had referred to help create the optimum environment for reoccupation, redevelopment or reuse. Given the cross-party support in the Chamber yesterday for these areas, I hope my ministerial colleagues will be supporting my proposals in this regard.
That brings to a conclusion questions to the Minister of Finance. We now move back to the education debate, and I call on Nick Matheson to wind on behalf of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to wind on the Alliance amendment to this motion. While the original